Mr. Brown, you are the vice president for the Montego Bay Chamber of Commerce. Recently, the chamber called for more decisive action to be taken in St. James with regard to crime. Are you happy with the state of emergency?
Well, it's hard to be happy with any state of emergency because of what conditions usually precede that. But for some time, as the Chamber of Commerce, the advocate for business interests in Montego Bay, but not just that, but the overall holistic interests of our citizens and how businesses are affected. We've been calling for action for several years. It's gotten to a point now where we feel it was inevitable. Naturally, there are going to be fallout effects. We've seen travel advisories from the UK, Canada, and the United States. Fortunate for us, it hasn't reached a stage where they have said do not travel to Jamaica, but be careful while you're in Jamaica and watch your movements and where you go. So if you can be happy about a state of emergency, we are, I guess, feeling so much more assured that at least something very serious, deliberate, and hopefully far-reaching is taking place to really cauterize what is happening in St. James.
What has the effect of the state of emergency been on the business community, especially downtown Montego Bay? What has that been like?
I mean, as you'd expect, when you have some kind of a curfew where businesses are now asked to curtail their operational hours, when citizens are now less likely to go into, out into the public to dine and to take part in entertainment activities, just the fact that they are less willing to do that because of the state affects businesses. Plus, the fact that these businesses are now being asked to close earlier, it definitely is affecting business, especially since Montego Bay, being a tourist capital of Jamaica, usually is very vibrant in the evenings and the night times with a lot of eateries and entertainment spots, hangouts. So definitely that's an immediate impact because, as you'll understand, the interest at the hotels, at the resorts, would advise their guests to either not go anywhere at all, which they're used to doing at an all-inclusive anyway, but for the ones that would venture out, probably don't go anywhere, or even even stronger language than that. So it definitely is affecting business in a serious way.
What is the intended effect of the state of emergency from the perspective of the Montego Bay Chamber? Is it a solution to crime?
No. The 5-point plan that the Ministry of National Security has come out with seems to be a holistic one, speaking to social intervention, how we can reintegrate persons who have been offenders, whether they be locally or deportees coming back into the island, ensuring that the justice system. I had a conversation with Minister Chuck the other day when I was a part of a swearing-in ceremony for 77 new JPs, Justices of the Peace in Montego Bay. And one of the things he was saying is that he has instructed his team to really move proactively and swiftly with some of the legislation, that outdated legislation that needs to be updated or really even creating new ones to really keep up with what has happened in Jamaica in the last 50 years, because some of them are really old. But no, it will take a public-private citizen partnership to really effect change. And a lot of the changes that need to happen, what we're doing now, essentially is a reactive, unnecessary reaction, but the source of the problems need to be addressed. And the source lies a lot with social intervention, a lot with holding fathers and parents accountable, but also providing mentorship, because a lot of young men don't get that support to learn how to be fathers. You don't just born and learn how to do things like that. So when there aren't opportunities, employment and educational opportunities in a lot of our so-called depressed communities, and then you have that cycle of violence and easy money coming in, it's hard for a young man who essentially is encouraged to be a baby daddy with many women to really understand the responsibility, the awesome responsibility he has, and how that trickle-down effect has a long-lasting impact on how young men in particular, because the perpetrators are mostly young men, in terms of where they go, their direction or lack thereof. So for us at the Chamber, we've been trying to do a lot of things to effect some of that change. We recently commissioned a crime study that we're going to be releasing to the public in short order, really looking at the sources and where crime is really focused in Montego Bay, the origins of it, and hopefully some of the things that we can do to mitigate some of these factors from the earlier stages, because once it reaches a certain stage, it really is about crisis management, and this is a crisis and we are trying to manage it. But in addition to doing that, we have to be proactive and productive. And I want to end with a positive note, that what's right with Mobay, with what's right with Jamaica, is far better than and far bigger than what's wrong. And it is a minority of persons committing these crimes, and a lot of them feel like they have no alternative. And if you are someone who is exposed to the realities of so-called ghetto communities and garrisons, and some of this is the residual effect of some of the tribal politics that we've been doing. I mean, I voted both ways in the local and government elections because I'm trying to, it's not about which party, it's about what's best for Jamaica. And hopefully more of us will take responsibility and being our brother's keeper and going back to the days when it took a village to raise a child. And I think that's a big part of it. Discipline, indiscipline is rampant in Montego Bay, in Jamaica. Just basic things like traffic violations, and it's a mindset that transfers to other activities. So there has to be some kind of a zero tolerance to indiscipline and lawlessness, and what the government has decided to do is necessary. I think they waited as long as they could have, but they had to have a reaction, and naturally it's going to affect business. But the bigger picture is, if we don't deliberately try to engage this problem, it's going to have an even far greater impact on all our lives, not just business. So we have to, bite the bullet right here. It's a bad pun. Bite the bullet and see how we can try to use all the different agencies, all different bodies, all citizens to effect the holistic plan that the government has put forward. And I think over the long term, because it can't be a case where this is a 9-day wonder and we go back to business as usual. Some sort of semi-permanent joint military police presence has to remain in St. James for a long time. For the criminals to realize that, well, we don't want them to migrate to another part of Jamaica, but they need to realize that we're serious about this. And this is our country, this is our city, and nobody not going to take this from us.
Brian, Minister Chuck recently mentioned that there were too many persons in high office with criminal connections, too many persons in high society. What do you have to say about that?
I'm born and raised in Mobay, and anybody that is from Mobay, anybody that knows the runnings in Jamaica knows that there are many persons who got their starts, let's say, in less than legal ways. And we know that money laundering is a real thing. We know that there are particular, stereotypical industries that people, seem to wash their money through. And we know that the history of Jamaica, coming from the 70s and the 80s, when it was rampant as far as political tribalism, that plays a part. I've heard it said too that Mobay probably doesn't have enough quote-unquote dons, because if they had enough, certain things could not happen. But that's foolishness, that's rubbish. I think at the end of the day, we know that there are a lot of persons in high and low places that are part of the problem, and equally part of the solution. But it's going to take a mighty, mighty will from the top coming down to really change that culture of corruption that we have here in Jamaica. And it starts with an individual saying that, look, I'm not going to pay for a blight. I'm going to play my part. I'm not going to be part of the problem. Because we might think that as average citizens that we are not part of the problem. It's politicians that do it. But no, there has to be a client at the end of that transaction. So it's a two-way transaction at the very least. So we are part of the problem too, and everybody has to look into their own life and see what they are doing or not doing, because apathy is a part of the problem too. You might say that, boy, I'm not doing anything illegal, but you're not doing anything to help. And until it reaches your doorstep, you say, boy, if you know, but you do know. So I think people have to get involved in community organizations like the Chamber of Commerce, like different service clubs, like some of the many programs that the government is doing through many of the agencies, like SDC, which is doing some great work in Flankers and in Granville and other communities. I think though we have to be realistic that this has been endemic in Jamaica for a very long time, before you and I born, and it's going to take a lot of persons who are willing to not get re-elected, to blow the whistles and to do what is necessary and sacrifice for the country as opposed to serving their own best interests.
Thank you, Brian.
For more videos like these, subscribe to BOJTV Live now. Hit that subscribe button now.